Okay, primitive mycology here again. Today, we're going to be working with a spore print. We're going to take this spore print and we're going to make a very, very simple spore solution. Excuse me. Here I've got a vial of sterile water. What I do with these is I never fill them more than halfway full, just because this is 5 milliliters and I'm looking for 2 to 3. I don't really see a need to make a huge amount of spore solution. When used properly, you can get tons and tons and tons of plates out of just this little bit, and you don't end up wasting your print. Off this one print, I'm sure I could run out 100 plates, and each one of them plates have many phenotypes on it. So I don't really see any need to make more than this at a time, because out of one plate, I could work many different phenotypes out of one plate alone, and then from there go to the next filial generations. Anyways, 1 hour in the PC with the lid just barely cracked. Tighten it up when it comes out. You know, obviously covered with foil. If you've ever done anything in mycology, you know that any kind of open source of anything, no matter how small, you always want to cover it in foil. That way the steam isn't sitting on top of it. Anyways, I've got in this old beer bottle some sterile pipette stems. These work great because they're tall. I stuff a cotton bud in there and the pipette stems. Pressure cook for 1 hour. I've got a sanitary pipette bulb. That's, you know, obviously hanging out in front of the flow hood. When doing this, you don't ever want to draw any spore solution up into the bulb. Never, because you can't sterilize it, they'll melt. Anyways, I mean, that's about it. Today, we're going to work with 60 millimeter plates. I normally use 90 millimeter plates, but sometimes when I'm working with spore solution, I only want just 1 or 2 colonies. You know, oftentimes you end up with more than that, but I'm just going to pick a few things off this, so I don't really see any sense in wasting a whole 90 millimeter plate. Now when I do transfers off this plate, I'll be using 90 millimeter. But for what it is now, this is all I need. So, first things first, sterilize our hands, or sorry, sanitize our hands with 70% isopropyl alcohol. As I've said in previous videos, isopropyl is your best friend in mycology. Constantly using it. We're also going to need a scalpel handle. These have been previously sterilized in PC, but I will still re-sterilize before I use it. Also, my trusty 70% isopropyl wipes. These will save you a whole lot of paper towels and they don't cost very much. Always kind of giving a little bit of extra saturation. So we'll wipe down the outside of our blade here. That goes clean. Wipe our handle down. let this sit for just a second and then we'll sterilize it. Got a little creme brulee torch. Some might call it a dab torch. We'll give it a little mist with isopropyl. Get it ready here. Get it ready to use. And I'll sit it right here where it can dry. In the meantime, while that dries, we'll go ahead and get our lid broke loose here. We want to run this off all the way and then just set it on, set it back on top, and we'll set it up here right in front of the flow. This is now dry enough to use. Go ahead and flame sterilize this. We'll let that sit for a second. In the meantime, let's adjust our camera just a little bit here. There we go. Re-sanitize our hands. Now, while our scalpel cools, the scalpel handle, we'll go ahead and we'll grab us a pair of tweezers. We'll go ahead, these have been through the PC as well. We'll go ahead and heat up our tips just a little bit. Sure that anything that could be anything, we go ahead and get it burned off. These do the same thing. We sit up here just a second. In the meantime, go ahead and get our blade ready. And the blade, the only thing we need this blade for is we're going to be scraping the spores from the print. And thereby doing that, we will then dump them into our sterile water, give it a good shake, But in order to do that, we need to be able to get our print out. And this print, I do not want to touch with my fingers any more than I have to. I especially don't want to be touching the spores with my fingertips if I can at all help it. Set them up there. Because the tweezers are angled, the tips aren't touching anything, but before we go to put this print back in, we will most definitely sterilize them again. And depending, I may end up needing to use them on this print. Our handle's nice and cool. In the meantime, I like to try to take just the very tip of my finger on the corner of the print, and then kind of use the scalpel to keep it down, and I'll use one of my other fingers to hold the other corner. All we're doing here is we're very lightly scraping. Once we've done that, move that up there. Now we have our spores sitting on there. And again, these haven't touched anything, but I'm still going to run over lightly just in case anything could have possibly fell on them. I highly doubt that. But it's always better to be safe than sorry. And now, we're going to take our print, and I'll show you with my other hand. We're just going to kind of curl it up like that. Just something like that. I like to do this with my left hand and then kind of pour with my right. Take that off. I just kind of grab it with the tweezers like this. And you can kind of manipulate it, hold it, and you're just going to kind of bump it a couple times. Just kind of give it a little tap. The spores will drop in. And we turn that. Got it back up there. Then touch anything. There you can see we only took like 1/10 of that. Just a little tiny spot. And that's all we need. So now, our bag that we left in front of the flow, we'll very carefully kind of flatten this back out. Best we can. And we'll slide it back in our clean bag. Now we're done with the part we need the print for. So we'll go ahead and replace it back into the bag. Sealed up properly. Everything stayed in front of the flow hood the whole time. Now we're going to go ahead and screw our cap on here nice and snug. I always start out giving it a little swirl, and then I'm going to give it a couple of really good shakes. You can see, I don't know how well the camera can see here, but there's spores floating all through there. We just want to keep shaking. Make sure it's snug. Keep shaking until they all bust up. We don't want any more clumps than we absolutely have to have. Shake. And this is something too that if you wanted to, this 2.5-3 milliliters worth of spore solution here, you could do a cereal dilution or a ghetto dilution thereafter if you wanted. You could take this right here and take a milliliter out, add it to 10 milliliters of sterile water, otherwise, or really however much water, sterile water you want to use. It's up to you how far you dilute. The method that I'm going to use, I am literally going to be just pulling up drops into the pipette, and I will be placing 1 to 2 drops on each dish that I use. That is going to germinate. If you kind of roll the liquid around the top of the dish, especially with these small ones, you can really spread the spores out. And as you've seen, we didn't take very many, although that's probably thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of spores. 1 drop out of this is more than enough to start a culture. Okay, we're looking pretty good and homogenized. So we'll go ahead and crack our lid again. Same method as before. We just set her on top. Now we're going to get a pipette ready. Pull our cotton bud out. We want to watch and make sure, get the cotton bud stuck back in there, we want to watch and make sure that we never ever touch the tip of this. It's okay to touch up in here, because that's never ever going to be in that vial. Never at any point will that be in the vial. And most often, when you PC these, you're always going to end up with just a little bit of moisture in there because you're sterilizing with steam. No matter how good a jar you got, there's always going to be a little bit of moisture that gets in the pipette. But remember, this is sterile. So just as simply, you just press the bulb on the pipette, eject it, and you're still sterile. I have a tendency, I like to heat up just the very tip to kind of dry it inside. And obviously, a flame is sterile. I'll let this cool for just a second. This also makes sure that any mistake that I might have made putting this pipette together or in taking it out of the vessel, that I'm making sure that anything that might or could have happened while I was paying attention to the other end of it, I'm taking care of that right there. Obviously nothing's getting inside, but at times I have accidentally touched things with the tip of the pipette. So just out of force of habit, I would rather be safe than sorry. I don't want to have to do all this again. Or if I do, I want it to be for another project. I'll set up 2 plates. Unfortunately, these have a little bit of fog, which is why I'm using these ones. I just poured plates today. All the ones that didn't have fog, they're wrapped, and the ones that do, they remain in front of the flow hood, and I'm going to use them to germinate spores, as I'm going to be putting extra liquid in there anyway. Also, because when I work with spores, I use parafilm rather than grafting tape, because parafilm breathes. I don't know if it means anything, but in my mind, with that little bit of extra oxygen that passes through, I would think maybe spores germinate faster, but that's just conjecture. That means nothing. Don't ever take that to heart. That's just what goes through my head. And more than likely, there's probably 100 people that could prove me wrong. If anybody actually knows, though, I'd be happy to talk about it. Now at this point, I'm sure this is cooled off enough to work with. Go ahead and set this here. And we're going to agitate this a little bit. Meantime, we'll pull this off. That's it. Literally. Those 2. We'll grab 2 more here. And we're going to do the same thing. that's it. What's left, I will dispose of. I don't want to put this back into there. One, there's plenty in there. Two, although I've never set this down, I've already transferred from that twice. And at this point, it's been exposed for quite a while. Although it's not touched anything and it's been in front of the flow, I still would rather toss this out than risk a contamination in there. Had this actually touched anything, I would have changed pipettes. Being as it didn't, here we are. So we'll set that to the side, and in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get these labeled. First things first, we'll wipe down our marker. I don't want to be touching these plates after I've touched a dirty marker. And the way to look at it is everything, absolutely everything, myself, the whole world around me, every object, every bit of air, every dust particle, everything is dirty. In mycology, we only want mycelium. So the smallest microscopic spore in the air or dust particle that you can't even see, it will most definitely contaminate your plate. And then you get to go through the process of subculturing and trying to clean it up. So if I can, I try to avoid that. So anyways, I'll get these labeled and get them wrapped, and that's it. This is how I work with a spore solution in the most basic way. I'm sure that I will do another video about serial dilution, but for the project I'm doing as of now, there's just no need. Thanks for tuning in. This is Primitive Mycology. Enjoy.